Alright, and welcome back. So this video is going to be dry fitting the ribs into the fuel tank and then taping that off so you can mark it to know where you need to scuff. And then also when you go in to put the Pro Seal in, it'll make it so that you can, the tape will be laid down so any excess can be removed by peeling up the tape. So starting off here, I'm removing one of the connector pieces that you normally would have taken off in the leading edge section on the outboard side of the wing. But since I started off with the fuel tanks from the get-go, I've skipped all that part, so had to figure out when that was actually taken off and found it in the leading edge section there. I believe that's where you will attach the leading edge together with the fuel tank. But we'll find out more about that later on. So anyway, like I said, this is going to be a video about basically dry fitting everything and marking things off. And I think as I discussed in the previous video, when I was making the cradle does not help at all as far as forming the skin correctly to make it easy to put the ribs in place. In fact, this was a bit of a battle trying to get these in place. The skin just did not want to wrap around the forward end of the ribs, and no matter how much I tried to flex it and get it in place, all I was doing is bending my clecos. So eventually here I give up and I take it out of the cradle and basically attach one side of the ribs and then just kind of force the other side on until they finally line up well enough that they go on fairly easily. So it's a bit of a pain in the butt, but it's something that can be done. You just gotta finagle it a little bit. So all of this is to prepare for putting in the Pro Seal and sealing the ribs. One of the posts on the Vans Air Force forums talks about a process to do the Pro Seal, and they talk about basically putting everything in, put the Pro Seal in the rib that you're working on, put the rib in, and then cleco it. Don't rivet it, cleco it, and let it sit overnight for a night or two to let it really set, and then come back in with rivets to actually rivet the piece in. And so I'm going to try that process. I'm going to look it up a little bit more just to research that I understood how that process went correctly. But the builder that had done that had done it several times and said it always worked out very well for them. And it makes sense, and it also makes it so you can operate a little bit faster because you're not trying to rivet at the same time that you're trying to install and running against the clock with the Pro Seal. So we'll try it and we'll see how it works. So here you see that, like I said, I had to give up on the cradle and just attach one side of the ribs and then just kind of roll the skin over as best I could to force it on the other side to get the skins to actually wrap around correctly. So this is the process that I'll repeat when I start doing the Pro Seal. It's going to be a pain in the ass putting the ribs in and working with the Pro Seal, but I think this will be the easiest way to do it. So like I said, I'm going to dry fit everything, attach everything inside, and then once I have everything clecoed and the skin is being held in place by the other ribs, I'll basically remove the clecos for one rib at a time, put the Pro Seal in that portion, put the rib back in place, and then cleco it back, and then move to the next one and repeat that same process. I think that's about the only way I'm going to be able to get this done correctly and fitted correctly. One thing I don't want to do is to kind of warp the tank by letting it misshape as I'm working the Pro Seal. So that's why I'm going to have all the other ribs kind of holding the form for me. So, but like I said, the other that method that I talked about, it seems like it won't be all that difficult to do it that way. And like I said, you just remove the clecos in the one rib at a time, Pro Seal it, put it back in place, and cleco it. And then when it's done, after a couple days, it's set. Then you just remove one Cleco at a time, and you put sealant around on a rivet, put it in the hole, and I think they called it a wet rivet. Rivet it in place, and then seal the back end of it, and then just go one at a time in that fashion. That way the Clecos are holding the shape, and you're not stressing the sealant that's attached to the ribs. One thing I want to make sure of is that I don't accidentally pull the skin away from the ribs and break that seal that I've made. Like I said, the one thing you don't want to do with this is create any chance of a leak later on, because that's, from what I've read, is a big pain in the butt to try to fix. So like I said, I'll do some research a little bit more just to make sure I understood the process that the builder had discussed, but it sounds like that's probably a good process to go through. So essentially you're going to go through, put everything in together, and then once everything is closed up from the back plate forward, the fuel cap's in place, all the holes are plugged up, then you can do a leak test. And you can do a leak test before you even put the back plate on, because once you put the back plate on, that kind of makes it finalized and makes it very difficult to fix any issues that may come across. So what you can do is just put everything in place with the exception of the back plate, which is where this is looking at now where the back plate would be. Fill it up with water, let it sit overnight, and see if it leaks anywhere. And then just that will at least give you a good idea if you have anything to worry about while it's still open. And if you find any leaks, then it's a good time to go back and fix all of that. So this way, it makes it so it's not that big of a deal if you find a leak. If you wait until after you put the back plate on and you've sealed it in place, then you have to break that seal, and it does become a pain in the butt. So anyway, now I am working on taping off the ribs, and again, that's so that when I take the ribs back out, they're marked off, and I can take that Scotch-Brite pads, the purple Scotch-Brite pads, to scuff it up so that the surface has a better attachment point for the Pro Seal. And then also, like I said, it makes it so that when I do apply the Pro Seal, anything that oozes out too much will come up with the tape when I pull the tape off, and it'll help keep it a little bit more clean. There are a lot of folks that say more goop is better, but I don't necessarily think that it makes that much of a difference so long as you have a good seal. So that's one thing that I'll be working on, to try to keep it as clean as possible and try to minimize the amount of excess Pro Seal. Obviously, you want to make sure you have enough to create a good seal, but you don't have to just make globs and globs of messes everywhere. So that's what the tape's for. Also, in the instructions, it talks about there are 2 holes on 3 of the panels. Basically, the 2 outside panels. There's the one you see there, and then the other side is actually made of 2 pieces. Well, all 3 pieces have 2 holes in them that you need to rivet and close up, and so that'll be a part of the process when I start Pro Sealing, that I'll close those up also. They're basically just holes that are there from when they formed the plates. They hold the plate in place while they hydropress the rib, and so you have to plug those up, obviously, so that it doesn't leak fuel. But because it's a part of the barrier, you have to use Pro Seal to close it up. So what I've done is essentially done all the prep work for everything that I can before it's time to apply Pro Seal. That way, when I start putting Pro Seal on, it's a matter of just going forward. You don't have to stop to do any preparation, final drill anything, or deeper or anything. Stuff. All that's done. So it's just a matter of putting the piece in, applying Pro Seal, and then putting the piece in, and then Cleco in, and moving on to the next step. So, like I said, you have a very finite time period to work with the Pro Seal. I've got 1 tube of 6 ounces of Pro Seal. I think that should be enough to do at least the majority of the ribs, but I got to get some more on order just to make sure I have enough. And as I've discussed before, a Pro Seal is not fun. You want to make sure that you have plenty of towels. You want to wear some clothes that you don't really care about. Stuff stinks, but it's not as terrible as a lot of people will make it out to be. I've done it with the trailing edge of the elevators, and it wasn't the funnest thing to operate with, but it wasn't as bad as some people have made it out to be. But you still want to take the necessary precautions and make sure you don't try to minimize getting it all over the place, because it does go all over the place. So the process generally be lay down a bead on the surface area that you want to seal, and then I'm going to take some sticks and spread it out basically, and make sure it's all nice and even across the surface that I'm trying to seal. And then put as you put the rib in place, cleco it, and then, like I said, let it sit for a little bit before you then go back and do the wet rivet and make sure you seal everything. So anyway, the rest of this is going to be disassembling this and getting ready to work on some other pieces. But everything's dry fit just fine. And now it's just a matter of getting the skins ready for the Pro Seal. So I'm going to let this video run out. I apologize, this one's a little bit long, but I appreciate those that continue to watch these videos. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, by all means, leave them below. And if you get a chance, hit that like button for me, and hopefully it'll allow some others to come across these videos as well. All right, we'll see you guys next time around.